Hey everybody, it's Avi Tenenbaum with TFRP, Torah for Real People. Check us out on WhatsApp, YouTube, soon on other platforms. TFRPgroup@gmail.com. If you send an email, you'll get the links. TFRPgroup@gmail.com. Okay, I want to talk now about Tehillim abuse. So if you ever heard about elder abuse, you ever heard about emotional abuse, physical abuse, so I'm going to talk about Tehillim abuse. So every year I go to Kivrit Tzadikim all over Eastern Europe. We just came back from an 8-day trip. We're going to make some videos about it. Very excited to share about that. But I want to talk about a sad story that happened when I was there. I was by the kever of Rav Nachman of Breslov, and I've been going there since 2010, I think, maybe 2009. And there's a skula, there's an Indian, an idea, that if you take a child who's not yet 7 years old and you bring him to the kever of Rav Nachman, then this somehow benefits the child and it's very good for him. We're not going to get into that now, but it's brought down in the Sfarim. So I brought my kids there, and perhaps I'm going to bring my next 6-year-old in the lineup to there next year. Bli neder. So I was in the kever of Rav Nachman, and if you've ever been there, there are thousands and thousands of people there. It's noisy, it's exciting, there's singing, there's simcha, there's people making siyums, there's people davening, people learning, there's people dancing, playing music. It's a fascinating place. It's not boring, to say the least. It's a very multicultural place, and so you have people from all over the world, from France, from America, Montreal, Israel, obviously, tons of places. And there are many types of cultures, whether it's Nanachs, whether it's people from Yesharim, whether it's Litvaks that got into Breslov after they were in yeshiva, like I am, and things like this, okay? So there's all sorts of people, and to my right, there's a guy making a siyum on the Zohar, and that's pretty cool, okay? Because you don't see that every day. And then they're singing, all the Reb Shimon Bar Yochai songs. To my left was a father, and he's with his 6-year-old son, okay? He brought his 6-year-old son to say Tikkun Klali, which is 10 chapters of Tehillim, by the graveside of Rav Nachman of Breslov. Now, I've done this before with my kids. I'll put in a picture of me doing that. I just found it today. And it was painful to hear, and it was sad. And I'll tell you why. He had a very strict, unreasonable, draconian, ignorant, abusive way of making his son say Tehillim. And not only did he make his son say these Tehillim, in other words, he wasn't helping his son say Tehillim, he was making his son say the Tehillim. And each word had to be pronounced a very, very specific way that according to the perfect diktuk of all the shitas, it's just the right way. So I'm no maven in diktuk, but let's say the word velin vi'ai, right? Because the pasuk says velin vi'ai al tareu. I think that's the pasuk. He was getting his son to say velin vi'ai, velin vi'ai, velin vi'ai, velin vi'ai, and that's irritating, right? I've already said that 4 times and you're starting to get annoyed. So he would say this to his 6-year-old son like 50, 70 times. And I'm not exaggerating. Because he wanted his son to say the word velin vi'ai, or velin vi'ai as we say it, in exactly the right way. I don't know what that way was, but then he came to the word ezkara, right? Because it says ezkara elokim. So ezkara, ezkara, ezkara. And it was so sad, because the child was crying. And the father says, you're not getting out of here until you say it the right way and until you finish the whole thing. And the kid says, I need a break, I have to go to the bathroom. You're not getting up until you finish. You have to do this. Stop getting out of it. I tell you what to do. Okay? So he's completely demoralizing his child. The child is begging for a break. The child has to go to the bathroom. The father says, just hold it in. You have to finish this Tehillim. And the father was weaponizing the Tehillim and the skula against his child. Now, you don't have to be a brilliant developmental psychologist to guess what might happen to that child. And I prayed for the child, and I prayed for the father that he should have the insight to know how to father his children. Now, I don't know the father's background. I didn't say anything to him because I'm the type of guy to walk over to someone and talk to them even if I don't know them. I will do that, and I've done that before. I felt here there's just no point. I didn't even try. I prayed. There's an idea that you can pray instead, and in an indirect way that can help, and so I just went with that route. In this case, I don't know the father. I don't know if his father was like a criminal, an alcoholic, how he was raised. I don't know, okay? I could tell you that you don't have to be Einstein to know that what the father is doing is he's teaching his child that mitzvahs are a source of pain and agony, suffering, abuse, trauma, demoralization, humiliation, frustration. Okay? And there's probably more words. And this is just off the tip of my tongue. And it broke my heart. Okay? I've had bad teachers in life that they took the Torah and used it against me. And I know what that's like. I made a Shavuos video on Torah for Real People. If you're new to this group and you're just hearing this for the first time, check out the Shavuos video. People really love that video, and sometimes you get feedback, and I got tons of feedback like, wow, this is amazing, this is incredible. And it was about this topic, so check it out. And it was about how people sometimes come and use the Torah against you. I mean, what's up with that? And the pasuk says, "Diracheha darchei noyam v'kol nesivoseha shalom." The starting point of the Torah is supposed to be, it's something of peace, of beauty, of contentment. It's supposed to be restorative. It's supposed to be healing. Now we have another pasuk which says, "Tzadikim yelchu bam u'rashayim yikashru bam." So we made videos on that too. That's an earlier Torah for Real People video. I wrote a big post on that on a listserv not long ago. That pasuk is saying that the righteous use the Torah in a healing way to help them and other people grow. And the wicked, they can use the same words to just bring damage and harm to themselves and the people around them. Okay, so the Torah has the ability to be used and misused in that way. I'm going to tell you that my friends who went off the derech, okay, I almost went off the derech in a certain way a few times, and I had to struggle with this because I had some negative Torah experiences from different rabbeim and people like this when I was a kid. But I'll tell you that my frum friends who did go off the derech, look, only God knows. But as far as I could tell as a 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old, it was because their parents were weaponizing Torah against them and bullying them into keeping mitzvahs. And of course, when you do that, nobody wants to be affiliated with Torah and mitzvahs, so then it just alienates them. And what's my point? My point is, if you find yourself doing this, don't worry, okay? But let's notice that we're doing that. Let's recognize and admit that. And when we admit something, it opens up the possibility for learning something new. And then we can consider who's the right guide to coach us and how to do this differently. A lot of us don't have role models from growing up as children to know how to parent our kids in a Torah environment, which is beautiful, restorative, healthy, therapeutic, okay? And that's okay. It's not your fault, but it's our responsibility as parents to find somebody that's going to lead us on that path and teach us how to do that, okay? How to run a Shabbos table. Do you smash and kill your kids to sit at the table the whole time? Do you give them a little bit of leeway? Do you just let them do whatever they want and then they never come to the table? How do you manage that situation? That's a pretty common situation. Go find out the answer. Go find out a spiritual guide and a coach to help you do that. Now, who do you pick to do this? A big pitfall is a lot of us doing the Torah and mitzvahs don't have a tradition. We don't have a Masorah. And I talk about this all the time, and also there are previous Torah for Real People videos on Masorah. This is one of my alma maters, okay? If you do something without an oral tradition, and you're just reading books, and you're reading the book and you're saying, oh, Shabbos is great. Oh, I have a kid. I will teach him that Shabbos is great and make him sit at the table the whole time. So the way you're doing Judaism is a dollars and cents technical way. You read the book, on paper this is what it means, I'm going to go apply it. The problem is, you don't have context. You don't have an oral tradition to qualify for you what that's meant to look like. And if you don't do shimush chachamim, if you don't study and follow Talmidei Chachamim and be misabeg ba'afar ragleim, like it says in the Mishnah in Avos, roll in the dust of their feet and follow them and be a groupie and just get really into tzaddikim and learn from them, the living ones and the dead ones, and read stories about them and go to their house and try to get onto a Shabbos meal at their house and see how they run their table. And if you don't read books that contain the oral tradition about the mitzvah that you're doing, then you are in the dark and you are not going to know what that's really meant to look like. There are so many examples of this. I'm just going to give one right now. Vasikin. So in Breslov, they're very into Vasikin. Rabbi Nachman has a bunch of sichos about this in Sichos Haran and other places. But there's an oral sicha from Reb Nassan of Breslov, and it's written down in the Sefer Siach Sarfei Kodesh, that book was written by a Rebbe of mine that's very beloved to me. He died from a heart attack, Rav Weizsander Zatzal. But in Siach Sarfei Kodesh, Reb Nassan of Breslov says, I can't stand people who make too big of a deal about Vasikin to the point where they get all nervous and all depressed and anxious. That's not how it's meant to be. Okay? When Vasikin comes, this is not like a split-second astronomical NASA moment where if you miss it, the world comes crashing down. That's not how the Torah is meant to be kept. Okay? And that's not even how Vasikin is meant to be observed. You relax, you're happy. When you kind of think it's Vasikin and you do your best with a smile, you start Shemona Esrei. That's all it has to be. Okay? That's just a little example, but there's hundreds of examples like this. Go buy tons of art scroll books about Rabbi Yaakov Kamnetsky and Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, Rabbi Victor Miller, the Chazon Ish, the Satmar Rebbe, whoever it is that you affiliate with, and those are your heroes. Learn from them how they went about life and try to create a picture from the dead Rebbes how to live, and then find living Rebbes to kind of further qualify that for you. I'll tell you, I've been to many tzaddikim for Shabbos meals, for Yom Tif meals. I've seen how they interact with their wives, with their children. You want to do that. You want to consult with tzaddikim and rabbeim and svarim. Reb Moshe Tversky Zatzal, a beloved Rebbe of mine who was murdered in the 2014 Harnof attack, he always used to say, you need a dead Rebbe and a living Rebbe. You need both. And that's what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to finish this video with a beautiful lesson I learned from a Satmar, Mekubal, and Mea Sha'arim. So you would think that a Mekubal, who's the most intense type of rabbi, who's in Mea Sha'arim, super intense, who's Satmar, even more intense, you would think that he's going to be the most intense, ignorant person on family life. I'm going to tell you a beautiful thing. I had a Rebbe named Rav Shraga Samuels. He's alive today, doing well, Bezrat Hashem. He's in Mea Sha'arim. He's actually originally American. He speaks English. If you speak to him, send him my regards. He used to work with me on this issue. He was one of the tzaddikim I used to follow when I was younger and I was newly married and having children. And he would try to show me how to have a Jewish family. And he was so sweet and beautiful when it came to this. So he told me, take every mitzvah and turn it into an amazing family opportunity. Make it bonding time. Make it fun. Make it interesting. Make it exciting. Make it relaxed. And then people are going to learn that the Torah is the only thing, the most beautiful thing, the most incredible thing, and a way for the family to join together in Torah and in mitzvahs, okay? And so I would sometimes join him and his family on family trips because he wanted me to learn this lesson. So he would take his whole family to go picking esrogim, and they would make all this food and picnics, picnic-type food for the way. And then they would set up the picnic, and they would pick the esrog, and they would compare and look and joke and talk. And there was a road trip, and they would go there, and they would come back. Cutting the wheat for Pesach, building the sukkah together. You know, and I learned from that to make a big deal about things and to have a lot of fun. So every year, I always post videos around mitzvah times. where I try to carry on that tradition. And so, Sreifas Chametz, we make a really big thing about it, and we love it, and we enjoy it, and it's fun, and we watch the fire burning, and we talk about it, and try to get the fire to get bigger, right? And we save up the wicks the whole year of Shabbos and throw it in, and we throw the lulav in, and we make a whole big deal about it. B'dikas Chametz, we go buy flashlights, and then we have a lot of fun checking together for Chametz and making jokes about it, and it's just a good time, okay? So everything, we try to make a big deal. There's a Hanukkah night, we make a Hanukkah party, and we play dreidel, and I try to get lots of candy, and we make games, and so on and so forth. Quizzes, etc., okay? When you do that, you're doing the opposite, and that's what we want to do. And this father with the child that we started the story with, unfortunately, nobody taught him how to do that. It's sad. It's out of ignorance. He doesn't even know what we're saying. He's never heard of these concepts probably, and if I had to guess, he follows a Rebbe that also has no oral tradition. Don't pick any coach, Rebbe, or therapist that has no tradition. If you pick a guide, don't pick a guide that became from 10 years ago and is also just living by the book and kind of winging it and figuring it out. He's a fakester. Don't go to people like that. Go to somebody that has an oral tradition, who he studied by somebody before him, and they studied by somebody before them. That's how this works, okay? I had a Rebbe, Rabbi Shurkin. He should live and be well. He's in his 80s now. He's still alive. He lives in Har Nof. A very fascinating, eccentric character. And he was mashamish all the Gdolim in America right after the Holocaust. Reb Moshe Feinstein. I mean, tons of people. His father was a famous Rebbe, I think, in Torah V'das. Rabbi Yaakov Moshe Shurkin. Rabbi Shurkin always used to say, Sfarim, right, Jewish books, here's a Gemara, Jewish books are for orphans. And I've said this in TFRP videos too. And what that means is, if you have nobody to ask, you have no father, you have no teacher, and no tradition, and you have no choice, so you look in a book, and it says, do A, B, C, D, E, and you figure out what that means, and you do your best. But thank God, we're not orphans. We have guides, we have people that are alive, and we have these amazing Gedolim books. Buy them, read them. I just bought a new one recently, and you know, guys, I'm very, very busy, but I prioritize, I make time for this stuff. I just bought a new, beautiful, beautiful book about Tzvi Aryeh Rosenfeld, who's a super inspirational person. If you never heard of him, it's even more of a reason to find out who he was and read that book. I'm starting to read that book now. Many sweet books, I don't know how else to say it, that just gives you so much wisdom and context for how to keep the mitzvahs. Let's use the Torah and mitzvahs as a way to raise ourselves up and everybody around us, and not to kill everyone around us. We should be zocha to receive the oral tradition, have the best leaders, the best guides, the best teachers, and make Torah a source of healing and beauty and joy. Thank you, guys.